Before we begin, take a second, right now, hit that subscribe button, like this video, and drop your thoughts in the comments. This is one of those stories everyone will be talking about, and your voice matters here. This story begins with a shock that spread like wildfire across the internet. A single post, just one post, but within minutes, it had people staring at their screens in disbelief. President Donald Trump shared an image, not just any image. It showed former President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama in a way many people immediately called racist, offensive, and deeply disrespectful. There was no confusion about what people were seeing. The reaction was instant. Social media exploded. Critics, supporters, public figures, and everyday citizens all jumped in at once. Some people asked, did this really come from the president? Others didn't ask. They reacted. Anger came fast, very fast. For many Americans, this was not just another political moment. This felt personal. It touched on race, respect, and the limits of what leaders should say or share. Within minutes, hashtags began trending. Videos, reactions, and comments flooded every platform. Newsrooms scrambled, analysts rushed to understand what just happened. And then, something even more surprising happened. The post disappeared, gone, deleted without warning. But by then, it was too late. Screenshots had already spread across the world. Millions had seen it. Millions more were about to. And now, a bigger question was rising. Why was it posted in the first place? As the hours passed, the backlash grew louder. This was not just criticism from political opponents. It went beyond party lines. Even some Republicans began to speak out. That is when things took a serious turn. When members of the president's own party start raising concerns, it signals something deeper. It shows discomfort. It shows pressure building from inside, not just outside. Some Republican voices called the post inappropriate. Others went further, calling it harmful and unacceptable. But many were careful. They chose their words slowly. They knew the weight of criticizing a sitting president, especially one with a strong and loyal base. Still, the message was clear. This moment was different. At the same time, civil rights groups began speaking out. Community leaders expressed concern. They said this kind of content, especially from the highest office, sends a message that can divide people even more. For many Americans watching at home, the situation felt tense, very tense. It was no longer just about a post. It was about what that post represented. And then came the silence from the White House. At first, there was no clear explanation, no official statement, just questions building, hour by hour. People waited, and when the response finally came, it only added more fuel to the fire. When President Trump was asked about the post, many expected a clear apology, a simple moment of regret. But that is not what happened. Instead, the response surprised many people watching. The president did not fully apologize. He did not clearly step back from the post. Instead, he defended his actions. He suggested that people were overreacting. He pointed to what he called humor and free speech. For his supporters, this response was not shocking. Many of them stood by him, saying the backlash was unfair and driven by political bias. But for critics, this response made things worse, much worse. They argued that this was a missed chance to calm tensions, a missed chance to show leadership. Instead of closing the issue, the response reopened it. And now the conversation was growing even bigger. People began asking deeper questions. What are the limits of speech for a president? Should there be a higher standard? And what happens when those standards are tested in such a public way? Across the country, discussions began at dinner tables, workplaces, and online spaces. This was no longer just a political story. It had become a national conversation. As the story continued to unfold, media outlets across the world picked it up. This was no longer just an American issue. International leaders, journalists, and observers began watching closely. They wanted to understand what this moment meant for the United States and its leadership. Back at home, reactions became more emotional. Some people felt hurt, deeply hurt. They said the image crossed a line that should never be crossed, especially when it involves former leaders and their families. Others focused on the bigger picture. They warned that moments like this could increase division in an already divided country. And then there were those who defended the president strongly. They argued that he was being targeted unfairly and that his critics were using this moment to attack him politically. So now the country found itself split again. Two very different views, two very different reactions. And right in the middle of it all was one question that refused to go away. Should this have happened at all? Because no matter which side people stood on, one thing was clear. This moment had shaken the political landscape. As pressure continued to build, attention turned to what would happen next. Would there be a clearer statement from the president? Would there be consequences? Or would this moment fade, like so many others, in the fast-moving world of politics? For now, the answers remain uncertain. But what is certain is this. This story has left a mark. It has forced people to think, to react, and to question what they expect from those in power. It has also shown how quickly a single post can change the entire conversation in a nation. In today's world, where every message travels instantly, every action carries weight. And when that action comes from the President of the United States, the impact is even greater. Now, the country waits, watches, listens, because the next move could shape what comes next in this already intense moment. And one thing is clear. The pressure didn't stop at social media or headlines. It started spilling into real life, town halls, press conferences, conversations in living rooms across the country. People wanted answers. They wanted accountability. Every day, it seemed, the story grew bigger. Every news outlet, every talk show, every online commentator had something to say. Some said the post was a sign of a president testing boundaries. Others said it was a moment of recklessness, a dangerous one, given the influence of the office. Political analysts began pointing out that moments like this have consequences beyond the moment itself. They shape public trust. They shape how citizens feel about leadership, and they shape history. Even within the White House, sources suggested tension was rising. Advisors were reportedly debating how to respond. Some urged a stronger apology. Others argued defending the post was better for the president's base. But no matter what they chose, the public was watching, and history was taking notes. Meanwhile, the former president and first lady remained mostly silent. But their supporters were vocal. They condemned the post, calling it hurtful, disrespectful, and unacceptable. They warned that moments like this can inflame division, hurt communities, and damage the nation's image. And so the nation found itself in a strange, tense place. One post had sparked outrage, debate, and reflection. One post had made everyone pause and ask, what does leadership mean today? The conversation soon shifted to social media itself. Platforms that had hosted the post were under scrutiny. Questions were asked. Should this have been allowed to spread so widely? Should the president face limits online? Some tech experts argued that free speech comes with responsibilities. They pointed out that the digital world amplifies every message. One post can reach millions in minutes, and when it comes from the president, the effect multiplies. This brought a new layer to the debate. Not just politics, not just personal offense, but power, influence, and accountability. Schools, universities, and community organizations began discussing the implications. Lessons in civics and media literacy became suddenly more urgent. How do we process information responsibly? How do we separate truth from manipulation? And how do we respond when the leader of a nation crosses a line? Meanwhile, in Washington, the political divide widened. Critics said silence or defense of the post was a failure of leadership. Supporters said critics were overreacting, looking for ways to undermine the president. One thing was clear. The conversation was no longer about just one post. It had become a symbol of power, responsibility, and the choices that come with them. Then came the follow-up interviews, and once again, the president refused to fully apologize. Instead, he defended the post. He argued it was meant to be seen in context. He said people were too sensitive and politically motivated to criticize it fairly. For many Americans, that answer didn't land. It felt like dismissal, it felt like deflection, and it left an uneasy tension hanging over the country. Journalists pressed for clarification, analysts debated, everyday citizens expressed frustration and disbelief. They said leaders must take responsibility, especially when actions hurt or inflame communities. But in politics, perception often matters as much as action. For supporters, defending the post was a sign of strength. For critics, it was a sign of recklessness. And the world kept watching. International media, foreign leaders, and diplomats weighed in quietly. Taking note, the post was no longer just a domestic controversy. It had become a global story. It was clear now that this one post, one decision, one moment, could shape narratives far beyond what anyone imagined. As days passed, the story evolved. New details surfaced. Tweets were analyzed. Old posts were revisited. Experts dissected every word, every image, every reaction. Civic leaders began asking bigger questions. What kind of leadership does America need right now? What responsibilities come with the highest office? How do we balance free speech with respect and decency? This wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about the fabric of American society, about trust, about the way people communicate, argue, and coexist. People realized the stakes were higher than a single post. This was about precedent, about the line between provocation and offense, and about the standard citizens should expect from their president. And as the nation waited for a next step, whether an apology, a statement, or another post, the tension didn't fade. It grew, because the world had seen the power of a single act, and now everyone wondered, what comes next? Here's the truth. This story is far from over. The post may be deleted, but the reactions, the debates, and the questions remain. Americans are talking. Citizens, leaders, and even international observers are asking the same questions. How far is too far? When does leadership cross the line? And what does it mean for the future of the country? History will remember this moment. Social media will remember it. And citizens will remember it. Because one action, one post, one decision revealed the power and the danger of leadership in the digital age. And now the country waits, watches, listens, hopes for answers, hopes for accountability, hopes for clarity. Because this is more than a story. It's a moment that shows how quickly our world can change with a single click. A moment that reminds us all how important responsibility, respect, and leadership really are. Stay tuned. The next chapter is coming, and whatever happens next, America and the world is watching.